last speaker, she's terrified of roller coasters. She's lived for weeks at a time on junk food. And one time she took an elevator with a homeless guy who looked like Alec Baldwin. Then he talked and she realized it was Alec Baldwin. Niloo, come on up here and thank you for being so fantastically patient.
Okay. Hey guys, oh wow. Thanks so much for having me. This is like super exciting. I'm really happy to share with you guys my journey and more importantly, my failures. So I'll just get right to it, I guess, because we're a little bit short for time. The first job, when I got my first job in tech, I was at rock bottom. So I was $20,000 in debt. I was living in my parents' basement, and I didn't have anything to show for my life. I was trying to be a filmmaker for like 6 years, and it was at that point in my life where I had to admit that I had failed at it, and it was really one of the hardest things that I ever had to do. So that's where I was. And so rock bottom is a really, really horrible place to be in for any of you guys who have been there. But one of the things that's been really great about it, that's kind of a silver lining that no one talks about, is that when you're at rock bottom, you really have nothing to lose. There are no expectations, and you can just kind of live your life. And so that's where I was when I got my first tech job. I didn't have any idea about where I was going to be in 3 years from now. I had no clue, but I was just taking it day by day, and I was enjoying what I was doing. And that's where I kind of started to work with a lot of developers, and I got really, really interested in coding. It was such an enigma to me, so I was like, I'm just going to learn how to code. So I went to like a coding bootcamp called Lighthouse Labs, and yeah, I did that. I learned web development, and then through that program, I got connected to this like random startup founder who wanted to hire someone for his very early stage startup. And I remember the day I was literally on the TTC going to Lighthouse Labs, and I get this email, and it's like, hey, this random startup wants to hire someone. And I was like, yeah, I'm interested. And then, of course, it was winter, and like, the TTC was terrible, so I got there like an hour later, and like everyone, like the guy at Lighthouse Labs was like really like frantic, and he's like, hey, this guy came, he wanted to meet you, but you're not there. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't know. Anyway, so talk to the guy on the phone immediately. He's like, yeah, we're only here for a day. Do you want to come for an interview? And I'm like, I don't know what your company does, but okay. So I went to the interview and literally got offered the job that day. And icing on the cake, they told me I had to move to San Francisco like that week. So it was really fucked up. So, but I got the job. Anyways, that random startup was Clearbank, for those of you guys who know what it is. It's one of the biggest companies in the city now, but back then, this was it. This was just the 8 of us, working out of Michelle and Andrew's house. Those are the co-founders. And that was, probably working at Clearbank was one of the most formative experiences of my life, because it really taught me what it means to fail and to not give up. And so I think one of the misconceptions a lot of people have about failing and not quitting makes them hold on to things that don't work for way too long. And so one of the things, and through Clearbank, I realized that that's not what failing and not giving up actually is. The entire time I was there, Clearbank didn't have product market fit. When I started with them, they were doing instant pay for Uber drivers, which is like so different than what they're doing today. And for them, not giving up wasn't holding on to a business model that didn't work. It was being really receptive and listening to what the world was trying to tell them, and being adaptable and changing and always learning. And so the time that I spent at Clearbank really kind of made me the person that I am. It shaped my mindset, and it made me resilient and curious. And it was actually also very randomly through Clearbank that I found out about blockchain anyway. So the way that I found out what blockchain was that one day a few of my coworkers and I, if one of my coworkers was randomly going to this thing called an Ethereum developers meetup, and I had no idea what Ethereum was, but I was like, I don't have anything to do tonight, so I'll go. And for any of you guys who have ever been to like, I guess maybe you haven't been or whatever, I would not recommend the Ethereum developers meetup as the first one you go to. I literally did not understand a single word anyone said the entire time I was there. And so I kind of left. I was like, okay, that was gibberish. I'm going to go home. And, and as I was walking outside, I saw a few people, and they were just kind of standing outside, and they were from the meetup, I guess. And they were going to grab a drink really close by, and they said, hey, do you want to come? I went along with them. And when I was having a beer with them, I asked them, what the hell was that? Like, what were we listening to? What is this? And they explained to me kind of in plain English what blockchain was. And from what I understood from what they told me, a blockchain is essentially like an entirely mechanical system that can do everything an institution can. So it's sort of like nobody owns the blockchain, not even the people who build it. And it's sort of an entirely decentralized system that governments can't stop. And so hearing that night was so meaningful and so powerful to me, and I'm gonna show you why. So this is actually, excuse me, this is actually a photo from the Green Revolution in Iran in 2009. And my cousins like protested at this. It killed like hundreds of people. And people were arrested, injured, killed, and my cousins protested at this too. And I just remember being really, really like worried about their life and feeling really helpless, because even before that in 1979, there was another revolution, and that's where the Islamic Revolution, essentially the Islamic regime came in. And it was really tough because I kept seeing every 30 or 40 years like another revolution coming on and people going out into the streets, like losing their lives, and essentially like if they were lucky, they could replace one corrupt regime with another. And it just felt super, super horrible, and I felt like there was no solution. So hearing that it was possible for people to be like their own sovereign individual, that they could operate outside of the need to rely on governments, was such a powerful idea to me. Excuse me, guys. This is an emotional part of the, okay. Yeah, so it was super, super meaningful to me, and I felt like I had to be involved. I had to learn about what this is, and I had to help tell people about it. Okay, so for the next like few months, this was basically me. So I was trying to do like everything that I could, learn as much as I could about blockchain and figure out how it worked and how I could be involved. And one of the things I found out really, really recently was that blockchains are really, really interdisciplinary. So to understand how a blockchain works, you also have to understand economics, computer science, law and governance, philosophy, so all these different disciplines that contribute to kind of the systems that we live in and kind of systems of power. And so I tried to learn all those things as well, and one of the things that I found was it was really, really difficult to get easy, digestible information, easy to understand information that was digestible around what like these systems were. So for example, I remember even I was trying to find out how money works, and everything on the internet that explained that was really like convoluted and difficult, and I just thought like, how is this possible? Like, how do we not know how money works? Like, how is there no information on this? And so that was a really big question for me. And that's when I came across the term techno-strategic discourse. And that essentially means language that is made deliberately difficult to understand to keep people out from engaging with systems and from understanding it. And so I realized that's why there's no information about all these things that hold all the power, because they don't want us to know, they don't want us to engage with it. And that was kind of what was happening with the blockchain as well. And so I thought, man, like it's my mission. I'm gonna like learn this information, and I'm gonna share it with everybody, and I'm gonna give everyone power. So then that's what I decided to do. So the only education platform that I could get my hands on at that time was, or I guess that I could find, was Blockgeeks. And weirdly enough, Blockgeeks was based in Toronto, so of course I reached out to them. And I just wanted to find out what they do and how I could help. And I ended up talking to their head instructor at the time, Hasib, and he told me that they actually had a position for a technical instructor who could come on board, help spread the message, help teach people about blockchain. And what was really amazing was that I didn't actually have to be a blockchain expert. They would actually pay me to come on board and learn and teach, just because the industry was moving so fast. And so that was like literally my dream, getting paid to do something that I was doing for free anyway. That was like perfect. But it meant that I had to leave my job at Clearbank right as it was really about to take off. And so I had a little bit of a conundrum. Like, I'd worked with Clearbank for so long, I'd been with them through all the failures, and right now when they're just about to be successful and I'm gonna be successful, I'm gonna leave to do something else. So it was a little bit tough, and I remember I tried to kind of talk to Hasib and try to convince him to let me work part-time so I could keep my job at Clearbank and just like help them out on the side. And he literally said to me, I remember we were at some like meetup or something, and he said, Niloo, are you gonna take the red pill or are you gonna take a blue pill? And I was like, I don't know, but it stuck with me. I don't know which one the Matrix pill is, but I took the one that was the Matrix pill, I guess. And so yeah, that kind of stuck with me, and I took the red pill and I took the job. And so for the next year, I just spent all my time teaching and learning, talking at events, and just really trying to create content that was digestible, trying to create content that was true. And here is where I guess the fuck up comes. But what was really tough, and I think Mawada also touched on it on her presentation as well, was people didn't really want to hear the truth. People didn't want to pay you to tell them the truth. They wanted to pay you to tell them what they wanted to hear. They wanted to pay you to say, hey, you can be a blockchain developer in 2 weeks. Come sign up for our program and you can make $120,000. And when that didn't happen, because of course that's not how life works, people weren't really happy with that. And so the whole time that I was at Blockgeeks, the challenge was, how do you create content that people still want to pay for, but that it's honest, and it tells them that there's hard work to be done, and that it tells them the real information about the fact that this technology is still not fully developed, that there's still work to be done. And so that was really, really where I struggled a lot within the company, and even in the talks and stuff that I did as well, because ICO companies and like other companies would come to you and they'd offer you to pay you a lot of money to like promote their thing and sell it off as education, but you could see that it was bullshit, and like it was really, really tough. But at the same time, if you just held out, no one would pay you, so also not an option. And I just felt myself slipping. I felt like I came into this industry, I took this job because I wanted to help inform people, I wanted to give them power, and now it was really like making money from them being ignorant. And so it was a really dark time, and I kept trying different things, but didn't really find success there. And so then I had like an aha moment, and aha moments are typically good, but this one was a really shitty one. So one of the big topics of debate in the blockchain world, I guess at the time and maybe still now, is this battle between convenience and scale, or security and scale. And so a lot of, like one of the biggest challenges people see is, for blockchain needs to be scalable, blockchain needs to be easy to use. That's when people are really gonna come onto the platform. And for a long time, I thought that was like a technological issue that could essentially be resolved. But I'll give you guys an example. So Bitcoin is a really, really secure system, but it's also really slow and it's difficult to use. But it's not like that because it's technologically weak, it's designed that way. It's slow because every single computer in the network has to verify a transaction before it's submitted to the blockchain. It could be faster if only some of the computers had to do it. But if some of the computers had to do it, then some of the computers would have more power than other computers. And so I hope you guys can see where I'm going with this. And essentially what I realized is that the cost of convenience is giving up control and giving up power. And that's not something that technology is going to fix, it's just the law of nature. And that institutions weren't going to go anywhere because most people aren't willing to do the work it takes to take control and to have power. And that was kind of what I realized, and I realized that me doing anything at Blockgeeks or the education that I was going to offer wasn't going to change that really. And so that was kind of my second rock bottom. And so I was in kind of a strange position because for the first time in my life, I was actually successful. I was making a lot of money. I was speaking at events. I was like a thought leader in the space. Everything that failed filmmaker Niloo would have dreamed about or couldn't have even dreamed about. But I was really miserable because I didn't really believe in the vision anymore. I didn't I didn't feel like the work I was doing changed anything, and I wanted to do something else, but I was really scared. I stayed at my job because I was afraid. I was afraid of losing all the things that I had accomplished. I was afraid of losing my salary. I was afraid of losing my status, everything. And I kept trying to convince myself, like, no, you have it so good. You have everything that everyone wants. Like, what are you complaining about? You've got such a cushy place. And essentially one day I realized, or like it kind of hit me, that I was in golden handcuffs. So I wasn't able to grow. I wasn't able to move forward. I wasn't curious about anything. And the only thing holding me in my place was just fear. But then the idea that I would never be excited or curious about anything else terrified me so much more than losing money or salary. Sorry, salary or anything like that. So essentially, what ended up happening is that I quit my job because I thought, yeah, I'll lose a lot if I quit my job, but I know I'll lose more if I don't. So this is my final slide, and you'll understand in a minute why. So I quit my job, and I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do. I had a little bit of money saved, and so I thought, I'm just gonna like have fun and live life, like go to the gym, whatever. And so I was working on this side project that I'd been working on for years, which was essentially ever since I learned to code. Like I was always really interested in like relationships and communication, and ever since I learned how to code, I started building this little kind of NLP engine that you put in text messages into, and it told you kind of like what the personality of the person who texted you is, and then give you tips on communicating with them. And so I never thought it was gonna go anywhere. It was just this like little tool that I had, and I started working more and more on it because I wasn't doing anything else, and I was just kind of having fun. And so I told a friend about it kind of in passing, and a few weeks later, he started messaging me and kind of hounding me, and he's like, I know there's a lady who's interested in your company and she wants to meet with you. And I was like, what company, dude? Like, what? And so I kept trying to avoid him because obviously like the way that he made it sound was like there was like a 50-year-old woman who was gonna like invest in my company, and I was like, I don't have a company, like no. So essentially like, yeah, but he was really relentless. He just kept hounding me, and then finally like he just made me meet with this woman. And so we met. And this woman was Nina Iordanova, this lady sitting right there. And if anyone has seen Arrested Development, when the day that Nina and I met was literally like this scene where Job and Tony Wonder become best friends. And so this is like a perfect rendition of us at the first time that we met. And neither of us knew we wanted to do a company. Neither of us knew. We just met. We just talked. And like within 2 weeks, we were both working full-time, building our current company, Hello Iris. And so I just want to wrap it all up. It was a little bit emotional, more emotional than I thought it was going to be. So just to wrap it all up, for me, failing at film is the reason for every good thing that happened in my professional life. And failing at blockchain is the reason that I got to build a company that I thought was never going to be more than a pipe dream. So the only thing I want to tell you guys is be open, be curious, listen to what the world has to tell you, and let yourself fail, because sometimes it's the best thing that can happen to you. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much for that, Niloo. Go on to Q&A, so hold on to that one as well.
Okay. Great.
So just to get things started here, does anyone have any questions? Awesome. Maybe we can start even back here. Why not? Speaker to speaker. Let's go.
Thank you for your speech. Very emotional.
Wow, yeah, I was not expecting that. Yeah.
Getting to it there. So thanks for sharing as well the importance of a mission when you build something, because at the end, this is, I guess, what makes the success of long-term company, as opposed to a very short-term company that can make money. But can you elaborate on where we are now? I'm just curious to know more about your company now.
Oh, wow, okay, great. So it's a company, it's called Hello Iris. It's an AI matchmaker that works over SMS text message. So it's like an alternative to dating apps like Bumble or Tinder or Hinge that are kind of more superficial and stuff. And it looks at kind of, it's backed by the engine that I talked about, which looks at people's personalities and matches them based on their compatibility. And so right now we just launched our product. We're in a private beta, and we're gonna test that out for the end of this year and hopefully launch in 2020.
Can I join?
Of course.
Oh, cool.
HelloIris.io. All are welcome.
Awesome. We have another question here.
I have a question about the blockchain,
Sure.
and especially its usage. I come from a design background, so more like how to use the technology. And if I understand correctly, blockchain is some kind of technology. Where do you think is the next kind of sector where blockchain is the added value of blockchain is going to be easily understood? Because I think Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies worked more than other blockchain usage because it was easy to see, and I bought Bitcoin and I'm designers, I don't know anything. So yeah, in your perspective, what's your answer?
Sure, yeah, that was the number one question that everyone always asked me every time I did a talk or a course or anything like that. So I came up with a little three-pointer to tell you about when a blockchain is useful. So the first time a blockchain is useful is if you're trying to cut out some sort of a middleman. So if you imagine like, so cryptocurrencies are a really good example of that, right? So you want to transact, but you don't want to use a bank, or you don't want to have to trust a third party to do it. Because blockchains are a trustless system, you can transact with parties that you don't know, and trust is not an issue. And I can talk about that later privately if you want. The second type of use case that's really good for blockchains is when you want to change incentive structures in a system. So a really good example of that is fake news, for example, right? So fake news is a system where people are incentivized wrongly because they're incentivized by clickbait. They're incentivized by, so I'm gonna write sensationalized articles because I know it's gonna get more clicks. And so it propagates fake news because people have perverse incentives. But if you wanted to use the blockchain to change that, you would essentially design a new incentive system where people are getting paid, for example, for fact-checking articles, right? And so if you're getting paid for if you're making money on fact-checking articles, you're essentially, the incentive structures change, so you're essentially like, you're restructuring that incentive, whatever structure. And Civil is a company that's doing that. And the third instance is if you want to make processes between multinational organizations more streamlined and with more data transparency. And so this is more like a Hyperledger, like corporate example. So let's say, for example, Walmart wants to use blockchain for its supply chain, right? So from the moment that the product is sourced all the way to the moment that it hits the shelf, Walmart deals with so many different vendors and suppliers that are in different parts of the world. And so what ends up happening is that piece of data, there's no transparency as it moves from vendor to vendor, and even transactions are really kind of manual and cumbersome, right? Because you literally have to like wire money to different people in different parts of the world. But if you kind of had a smart contract system that as soon as an item hit a new location, it would just like deposit the money immediately, and it would just be entirely automated, that would be the third kind of use case.
Great, thanks again. And I think that's a great place to end that right there. We encourage you to continue the conversation after the event as well. And yeah, give it up for Niloo.